Shadow and Bone. It's a beloved book series that was turned into a Netflix TV show that got good ratings, and yet they still canceled it after 2 seasons, leaving non-readers with no ending to this show. So, I figured I would read the books, get the full story, and share it with y'all. Netflix may not know how to finish this series, but I sure do. Let's get some reading done. This is our main character, Alina. She's a cartographer in training in the army. She also grew up as an orphan. This is her childhood best friend slash also orphan slash crush, Mal, who is a tracker in the army as well. They're both stationed in the same area. Alina is just standing here in the middle of the street staring at the Shadowfold, which is like this giant river slash lake that cuts off the rest of this country from its only coastland. So they are landlocked the rest of the way around. And they're struggling pretty bad because of it. The army is the only one that will really send these sand skiffs through to go through the Shadowfold, but it always comes with heavy losses. Tomorrow will be Alina's first time going through the Shadowfold, and she is rightfully terrified. Mal comes up behind her, breaking her staring contest in the middle of the road with the Shadowfold, and goes, "Let's move." She's asking, "What is wrong with you? Why are you not worried about this?" He just explains the king sent a group of Grisha pyros and also some of those creepy heart tenders to be on their skiffs, so they're gonna be fine. Now let me explain half the words in that sentence, okay? Grisha are basically element welders, kind of like an avatar, but they call it master of small science here. They're just able to control the matter around them, but it's not magic. Definitely not magic. A skiff is just the transportation they use to travel back and forth across the Shadowfold. It kind of looks like a boat, it has sails. They have the wind welders, or swallers as they call them, to get the wind to push them through the Shadowfold. Very handy. And heartrenders are basically the opposite of healers. They are able to just crush your organs by just standing there in front of you. So they're real fun. Not terrifying at all. Mal being afraid of them makes perfect sense. He's continuing to try to calm her down about going into the Shadowfold tomorrow. They're still in the road. She hasn't moved yet like he suggested. And then he has to tug her out of the way so a carriage doesn't run into her. Now, when these two look at the carriage, they realize this is the Darkling's carriage. It's all black, as you would expect. It's for the Darkling. I mean, what color were we expecting? He only wears black. That's the only color he associates with. Now, some people in this world do not trust the Darkling at all because his great-great-great-grandfather created the Shadowfold. And no one knows exactly why his great-great-great-grandfather did that. But the Darkling is the commander and the leader of all the Grisha, or also known as the Second Army. There's a couple other carriages that follow after him. One has a girl leaning out, waving at Mal, making eye contact. Ooh la la. This is Zoya. She's a beautiful Grisha girl. All Grishas are known to be very, very pretty people. Elaine does not love seeing this random girl flirt with her childhood best friend slash crush. Shockingly. Then Mal's friends, Mikhail and Dubrov, come up. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, did you see that dude? She totally made eye contact with you. We have to get into the Grisha tent tonight so you can have a little moment in a dark corner with her." Elaine is still standing there like, "Oh my gosh, please let me leave." And then they all just leave Elaine standing there by herself, walking away, didn't even bother to say goodbye. Her childhood best friend didn't even bother to say goodbye. Mal's a top-tier best friend. Alina now heads to the document tent, which is where the cartographers work to make maps and locations and stuff like that. She is also running very, very late. So she swoops in, sits in her normal spot next to Alexei. I so hope I'm saying these names right. Now, Alexei is one of her closest friends in the army. He's also the best cartographer in training. He is going to easily run the show here in a few years for this cartographer document tent. Yep. He's asking, "Where were you?" She explains that she almost got trampled by the Darkling's coach. He's asking, "What did it look like? Tell me everything about it." Now, at the end of the day, she's trying to go to sleep, but she just can't because she keeps thinking about the Shadowfold and what they might see in there tomorrow, and who they might lose in there tomorrow. Then she hears a few taps on the barrack walls. She ends up going out because she knows it's Mal. It's their signal that they made up. Now, he hasn't used this signal in months. He used to do it every night when they first got there, but their friendship has been dwindling the last little bit, mainly because Mal has a new group of friends and doesn't try to connect with her anymore. She goes out and instantly is like, "Please don't tell me you just want girl advice." He explains, "No, I'm not here for that. I just wanted to check on you. You seemed really worried at dinner." and I just wanted to see how you were feeling about everything. And then his two friends over here are just out in the distance, goofing off, already drunk, definitely. Having a grand old time while they're having a cute little emotional moment for the first time in forever. They end up reminiscing about their past, their time in the orphanage. He tries to make her worry less because it's not like a bunch of people die every time they go through the Shadowfold. Nothing like that. Nothing to be worried about. Alina, you just have anxiety. His friends end up calling him saying it's time to go. And he says, wish me luck, as they're off to the Gersha tent, hoping he can meet up with Zoya. Alina, real happy about that. Real happy. Her inner monologue is so relatable here because she just thinks, I hope he falls in a ditch and dies. Our girl is down pretty bad. Now, skip to the next day. They are in the Shadowfold, going through it at this point. She is sitting next to her best friend, Alexei. Mal is on the same ship, guarding it. He has a rifle ready to shoot at anything. These two are just cartographers, so they don't really have weapons besides crappy little knives. But they have those at least. It's going pretty good until Alexei grabs her wrist and goes, do you hear that? And then she listens and she does in fact hear the flapping of wings, which are the Volcra, the creatures that live in the Shadowfold, that eat humans. They get down and try to huddle under the railing and hide from them the best they can. The Pyro Gersha start pyroing fire. Now, the Volcra are supposed to move in small flocks of like 10, and there are hundreds of them. It's really bad. They're diving down, they're attacking the ship, and then one of them grabs Alexei and takes Alexei, and he's gone now. Bright future in front of him? No more, because he's not gonna be there for it. Alina does the best she can to save him. She's holding on to him for dear life, but he gets yanked away anyways. She runs to the railing shouting for him. Mal then shouts at her to move. He pushes her out of the way, gets a Volcra claw in his back. He falls over. He's not doing too hot either now, so she huddles over him, hearing the flapping of wings coming back again. She's panicking. She's trying to say it's okay. He's saying, I'll meet you in the meadow. He's accepted death. Then Alina feels a claw sink into her back, and just the pure frustration and everything. She feels something let loose, as she describes it, and then the world turns white, and our girl is knocked out. Alina wakes up. She notices they've made it to the other side of the fold. She doesn't see Mal around, which is a little concerning, but then she looks up and there's a guy pointing a rifle at her. She pushes it away, going, get that thing out of my face. And then he just puts it right back in her face. The soldier then calls to the captain of the skiff, saying she's awake, and a couple heart renders come over as well. She's sitting there thinking, what did I do? Did I break some kind of code I didn't know about? I don't know what's going on. Everyone on the ship is looking at her with fear in their eyes. This is not helping her anxiety at all. She's trying to ask about Mal to see if he's okay. Nobody's telling her. And then they start leading her off the ship. And that's when she notices they didn't make it across the fold. They just came back. They make it to Colonel Rasky. He asks her, what are you? She says, I'm a cartographer. My name's Alina. He's like, no, what are you? Alina's like, I don't know what you want me to say. They then start taking her to the Grisha tent. It just keeps getting better. As they're walking in, the Grisha are stopping and staring at her. Now, these are powerful welders of the elements, and they are stopping to stare at her. She doesn't know what to think of at this point. They then lead her straight to the Darkling. Now, looking at the Darkling, she knows that this man is probably around 100 years old, but he doesn't look much older than her. And that's because Grisha, depending on how powerful they are, they may live longer because of that. But even to look this young at 100-something years old is kind of unheard of. She hears a laugh from the crowd, and of course it's this girl, Zoya again. It's just laughing and giggling with her friends, gossiping. This girl is a menace! And then they bring everybody from the skiff in as well. Mal is there. He's very beat up and not looking too good. Very pale, lost a lot of blood, but he's standing. Not on his own, but he's standing. Colonel Rafsky then asks for a full report from the skiff. They report that they were 30 minutes into their journey when they got attacked by Volcra, and then as this attack was happening, there was just this blinding light. All of a sudden. It was like it was noon and they were staring directly into the sun. Then the Volcra all scattered from the light, and that's when they order the ship back to the dock. The Darkling asks, what about the girl? They say, I didn't see her. The Darkling then asks for somebody who actually saw her. The senior cartographer then steps up because he was also on the ship apparently. The senior cartographer then tells them about how Alexei was taken, how Alina tried to help him. Alina's standing there like, why didn't you try to help? You were right there. I was the only one who tried to save him. The senior cartographer just continues going on saying, and then I saw Volcra go after her and Mal. He says, I saw them go down, and then I saw light come out of her. Alina is trying to process all this, coming to the conclusion that this man must be absolutely insane, because what is he talking about? She's not a Gersha. She doesn't have special powers. Now, the room of Gersha are kind of laughing around her, staring in disbelief. Some of them are kind of believing it, but most of them are kind of poking fun at the senior cartographer for thinking this. Then Zoya chimes in, this is absurd. You really think we have a sun summoner? Alina now goes to her next best guess about what is going on. And clearly this has to be a practical joke on her and the Darkling. And she's thinking, the Darkling is not going to take this joke well and may kill somebody for this. The Darkling then asks Mal about what he saw. He doesn't say it first, but then he says the world was just shining all of a sudden. The Darkling asks, did you see where it came from? Mal goes, Alina's not... I've known her since we were kids. She couldn't have hidden that from me. The Darkling just responds with, we all have our secrets. The Darkling then walks directly up to Alina, right in her face, and asks, what do you have to say about this? She just says, there's been a mistake. There's been a really big mistake. They go back and forth like this for a little bit, and then he commands her to give him her arm. Huh? He goes, we've wasted enough time. Give me your arm. He then claps his hands together, sending the room into complete blackness, darkness, can't see a thing. He then grabs her arm, and she starts to feel this power reassurance feeling that she felt in the fold, but she pushes it back down. She doesn't want this to be real. She just pushes it back down from where it came from. He just says, not so fast, gets out a knife, and then cuts her arm, and then she lights up the whole room. I mean, this is a really cool party trick, what can we say? She begins to fall after this. He catches her saying, I guess you only look like a mouse. The Darkling then hands her off to Ivan, one of his trusted Gersha, and tells Ivan, I want her surrounded by an armed guard at all times until she is safely behind the walls of Uls Alta. Ivan then roughly tells her, come on. The Darkling stops him and says, watch your tone. She's a Gersha now. She's in the middle of this going, no, I'm not. I'm just a map maker. Please, I'm just a map maker. Ivan gets her to the Darkling's carriage. He goes, get in if you please. Kind of sarcastically. Alina just says no. No. Ivan then in a much sterner tone goes, I don't care what you want, but in a few hours people are going to be hunting you down. So I suggest we leave now. A healer also pops into the carriage, and there's this other guard Fedyor with them as well. The healer fixes her up as she's about to get out of the carriage. They've been moving, but she's gonna get out of the carriage. Ivan tells her, give her your kefta. Alina's going, I don't need her kefta, it's okay, she can keep it. Ivan goes, no, you're gonna want it, it's bulletproof. The healer gives it to her, looking a little sad, but she does. They then kick her off the island and make her walk back. Fedyor finally takes this time to introduce himself to Alina. She asks them, why are we traveling when it's dark if that's not the safest thing to do? And they explain it's safer than stopping. She sarcastically says, oh, because people are after me? She's really not getting the point here. She's not accepting it. She is in so much denial. Fedyor then explains to her, the Shadowfold has been doing our enemies' work for years. It's been keeping us weak. You might be the only one that would be able to get rid of it. But Shuhan and Frigida are not going to stand for that. I said those so wrong. I'm so sorry. Now, in this world, children at a young age are tested to see if they have abilities, so they're confused on how a sun summoner went unnoticed. She explains she was tested when she was 8, which is honestly older than they would normally test them, but that's because she was an orphan. And she says nothing happened. Ivan just goes, well, that doesn't make sense. Alina just shouts, that's what I've been saying, I'm not Grisha. Fedyor chimes in and goes, yeah, but remember what just happened at the tent? Okay, well, the Darkling caused that. No, he just amplified your abilities. He's an amplifier, that's one of the powers he has. He can make other Gersha's abilities stronger. Ivan says, it works like my necklace, which is a bear claw. Apparently, if you kill a certain type of animal, they can be amplifiers that you can wear to make your power a little stronger all the time. Now, not all Gersha have these. It's really only the Darkling's favorites that get those. Now, we're a few days into the journey now. They come across a fallen tree. These two get out to check it out, tell her to stay in there. They know it may be a sneak attack, and it is. She hears fighting outside of there. She's in the foot area of the cabin trying to hide from the windows and not get shot. And then the coach doors fly open and there's a man that she does not know trying to grab her. So she's backing up to the other door and then that door opens and a man grabs her out of there. She stabs him, gets away from him, starts running up a hill. Another man tackles her, is on top of her, and then the Darkling and a bunch of other Grisha show up. Now the once outnumbered Grisha are still a little outnumbered, but the Darkling's here and kills most of the people very, very fast and very easily. She calls out, "I'm up here." He sees her, starts trying to negotiate with this assassin. It doesn't really work, so then he just uses his powers to split him in half. And that's what the Grisha call the cut. Not all Grisha can do it. It is a hard thing to accomplish, but Darkling Sir over here can. Alina is scarred for life. She just had a man cut in half on top of her. She's backing away, terrified, lets out a scream. The Darkling rushes up to her, gently grabs her face and says, "Look at me," just trying to get her grounded back in some reality that isn't the man getting split in half. The Darkling says, "I just did what I had to do." They start to walk down. Alina starts to look at the body again, and he just says, "Look at me." Ivan and Fedor, they're all good. They made it out perfectly fine. They're now sending the coach and horses on the main road as a distraction, and she's going with the Darkling and the Grisha that he brought with him. She's also riding on the Darkling's horse this first day with the Darkling, and while they're riding, he ends up putting his hand on the back of her neck to use the amplifier abilities. So she can kind of feel that power and reassurance that she gets from having her abilities be active and working. This eventually kind of lulls her into a troubled sleep. The rest of the journey, they ride on separate horses. The officer said no more tension building on the horseback riding. No more of that. No more forced proximity for you. Now they're sitting next to each other, resting one night when they start talking. And the Darkling tells her, "I'll answer any question you ask me." Now guys, take one guess. What is the first question that all fantasy females ask somebody that they're interested in, who might be older than they seem? How old are you? There's not more important questions that she could ask, obviously. No, it's how old are you? He's 120, by the way. And I have really bad news. Alina's 17, guys. She's 17. I'm sorry, actually, never mind. Don't build the tension. I don't like this anymore. 120 is a bit too young of a mortal power. I don't know, what are you? But it's just, okay, we're just gonna hope they don't get much closer than they are and they just have a mentor-mentee relationship and it's gonna be fine. Surely we won't go down a love interest route, surely, right? Right. If romantic interest, why not appropriately aged? She then goes on and asks, "Well, I've heard from some people you don't have a soul. I don't think that's true, but that's just what people say." He just responds with, "Yes, some people do, unfortunately." He continues on talking, saying, "Every Darkling after my great-great-great-grandfather has been trying to fix this mess of the Shadowfold and the destruction. It's called Ravika, which is the country we're in. I don't think I've said that yet. Ravika, one of those." He continues on that train of thought, saying, "You are the first glimpse of hope I've had in a very long time." He goes on about how the world is changing and how muskets and rifles are just the beginning and they can't get enough weapons through the Shadowfold, so their country is falling very quickly behind. And soon Grisha power will not be all that powerful in the scheme of things. Alina asks, "How am I supposed to help with this?" And he just says, "By destroying the Shadowfold." 2 days later, they make it to Ols Alta. The first part of the city doesn't look much nicer than places she's seen before, but as they get closer and closer to the palace and the little palace, as they call where the Grisha live, the city gets nicer and nicer and nicer. They make it to the Grand Palace and it's just very gaudy, and the Darkling just straight up calls it ugly. He then takes her through a tunnel, secret tunnel, to the little palace, which is not as big and less ugly. Once the Darkling gets in, he gets one of the servants to take her up to her room and goes off to talk with his men. She's a little disappointed by this. She thought she would get the down low on what's happening here, but she's going up to her room now. She then gets to a stairwell, and she's been riding horseback for days. She's not feeling so hot and just about wants to cry seeing the stairs, which we've all related to at some point in our lives. She makes it up the stairs into her room. They ask if she wants any food. She goes no and just passes out on the bed, not even cleaning up from days, weeks of travel. Just straight on the bed, sleep, nice soft bed. I can't blame her one bit though, can I? She's woken up by a nightmare and is falling back asleep when there's a knock on her door. When she goes to open it, there's Genia.
The pronunciation of this word sounds like Genya.
This is where we meet Genia. She walks in and just goes, "You haven't even bathed?" I don't have time for this. Alina very rightfully asks, "What's going on?" Genia just says, "I don't have time." She shoots back with, "Make time. I've been traveling for days. I don't know what's going on. And I'm scared. And I won't do what you need me to do until you tell me what is happening." She's like, "I'm just here to get you ready for the king." She then shuts up and does exactly what she's told to do. Genia is a type of healer that can make people's faces look better. She's basically like a beauty filter in a person. So she puts a little beauty filter on Alina after some resistance on that, but she makes Alina look more alive. She also puts some gold flakes in her hair to make that look better. The king likes pretty women. She's 17. Genia finishes and says, "That's really the best I can do for now. You don't really want to attract much of the king's attention anyway, so we're fine." They then put her back in her cartography gear. She's noticeably pretty confused about this. Genia explains the king is expecting to see a humble cartographer walk into the room and not a Grisha. That's why she's not wearing a kefta. If I'm pronouncing anything wrong, just yell at me, that's fine. Genia takes her to a room full of other Grisha that are just all standing, and they stop and stare at her again. A guy comes up to her, Sergi, and is like, "Oh, you'll walk with us." And then Marie comes up and goes, "No, she's a summoner, she's gonna walk with us." These two are fighting back and forth about this. The Darkling walks in and just goes, "No, she'll walk with me." Everybody shuts up really fast. They all walk into the throne room. The king is clearly interested by her and tells the Darkling to bring Alina to him. He just says, "She's very plain. I'm sorry, what?" "Sir, I don't think this is what we need to be worried about." He then says, "Show me." So the Darkling makes the room black. He amplifies her ability. She makes it light. It's their party trick. It's their secret handshake. I don't know. The king just says brilliant and then pulls the Darkling off to talk. Genia then comes up and says, "The queen wants to meet you." Alina's like, "Sure, why not at this point?" Talking with the queen goes fine. The queen says, "Don't let court life corrupt you," and then they leave. As soon as they leave, Genia calls the queen an old cow. Now this is the second time somebody has insulted the king or queen in Alina's presence, and that's known as treason to a lot of people, and she's seen people get punished for that. But they seem perfectly fine with doing that here. The Darkling comes back, asks her how it went with the queen. "It went fine, she just looked at me like I was something her dog threw up." The Darkling just says, "Welcome to court." She comments that the king seems pleased. He says the king is a child. She's like, "What is going on with these people? Why are they talking like this?" The Darkling then tells Gina to take Alina back to her room and that there'll be a kefta ready for her tonight and it will be black. Alina's like, "Actually, can it be blue, please? I would like to fit in. I'm already sticking out like a sore thumb. Please let it be blue." They argue back and forth about that for a little bit, but he gives in eventually. Genia is trying to teach her some of the social norms of court. Of course, she could care less and just wants to eat her food. Genia, after dinner, then says, "You should get some rest. You'll get to meet Bagra tomorrow." She's a treat. When she goes down for dinner the next morning, Marie and Marie's best friend Nadia greet her. They become friends of sort. She's like the third friend in a trio when there's a duo, you know? Unfortunately. But she doesn't really care about that. That's not the thing she's really worried about right now. After breakfast, Genia gives her a tour of the grounds. They stop at the fabricator's workshop to talk to a guy named David, who Genia very clearly has a crush on, and he gives Alina a few mirrors to practice with so she can reflect light off of them. Genia then takes her to Bagra's hut and says, "Have fun, bye!" Gets out of there so fast. Bagra is the one who helps train all the summoners. She's an amplifier like the Darkling. When she walks in, Bagra just says, "You're late." I mean, our girl didn't even know what time to be there, so I really don't know how we're getting on her about being late when she didn't have a schedule yet. But fine! She just starts to mock our poor girl over here, and then they eventually start the lesson. Alina is only able to call her power with the help of an amplifier. Bagra is not too happy about this, but it's the first lesson, right? Now after lunch, her friends go with her to combat training with Botkin. It goes real bad. It goes real bad. At dinner, she asks, "Where does Genia eat?" They say she's always eating with the queen, always at the palace. The queen likes to have her close. One of them off to the side says, "So does the king?" Then they go, "But it's just rumors." Once she's about to leave dinner, the door behind the Darkling's table opens and Ivan comes out to get her to take her into the Darkling's planning room quarters of the palace. She's there now. The Darkling just asks her, "How was your first day?" She's sitting there going, Fine. Homesick? A little. She's in her head thinking that because she couldn't summon her powers that the Darkling is going to be mad at her, cast her off, kill her. She doesn't know. The Darkling then leads her to a secret passageway and says, here, you can take this so you don't have to go through the dining room again. Figure you don't want to do that. Before she goes through, she asks him, you just wanted to ask me how my day was? Then they go back and forth on how mean he may be. While they're doing this, she's absentmindedly rubbing her thumb on her palm. He grabs her hand, asks, why do you do this? She goes, I didn't even know I did that. He asks where she got the scar. She explains at the orphanage. The Darkling then asks about Mal and if he is a good tracker. She just says, the best. Then they say goodnight. She's in the library of the palace one day when the apparat, basically just a priest, appears and asks how everything is going and tells her not to forget to feed her soul as well. He also compares her to a saint because she suffered and she'll probably suffer more, and then hands her a book and just leaves. Crazy man, crazy man. She's just left sitting there like, well, that was creepy. She walks back to her room hoping to finally have a letter from Mal, but still nothing has arrived. She's been writing him pretty consistently. She's sent like 7 or 8 letters, but still hasn't received anything back. Now, at breakfast one morning, a group of unfamiliar Grisha walk in, except guess who is there? Of course, sassy Zoya is there. Cause why wouldn't she be? These two make a comment about how she's the best at everything, but also the worst to be around. Zoya then comes over, gives them an awkward hug after they were just insulting her. She then gives Alina a hug and says, you stink of Karamzin, which is where she was before this. And then just walks away like, well, see ya. Girl, no, you don't have to be this mean. Do you know you have other options? Later, of course, they're paired up for combat training, and who else would Alina be paired up with than Zoya, his star student? But actually, Alina ends up winning the fight because Zoya underestimated her. Zoya then uses her powers to throw Alina against a wall and breaks her ribs, and then she tries to stand up and passes out. Maria and Nadia are now checking up on Alina in the infirmary, explaining what happened after she passed out, how Zoya got kicked out of the combat training room and isn't allowed to be back in there with classes, and how she went into the Darkling's door and then came out crying. She's been humbled a little. And then sweet, oblivious Alina asks, why did she do it? They just go, jealousy. She wants to be the Darkling's favorite. Now that night, she's still in the infirmary, and then the apparat appears, starts with some creepy monologue, scaring her to death. She jumps up, is backing away, knocks a glass off of the table, screams, and then one of the nurses runs in. The apparat disappeared somewhere. He's gone. And she just stands there saying, sorry, I broke your glass. Okay, I'm gonna go back to bed now. Alina tells Genia what happened, and she says, he's creepy but harmless. Alina's like, no, I don't know about that, actually. Alina then asks her during this time, would you be able to find out where Mal is and make sure I'm sending the letters to the right place? Genia agrees to do this, to help out her bestie. They're pretty tight at this point. The next morning, she goes to train with Bagra, and then she hears shouting from the inside, and it's the Darkling and Bagra arguing about something. Alina walks in and ends up in the middle of this argument. Bagra goes, this boy just wants to get you an amplifier. You don't need to summon your own powers. Why would you need to do that? Alina's standing there going, actually, that makes a lot of sense. Yes, he should do that. Then they start telling her about this legend of deer from the legends of Morzovis, and this stag that if they killed it would be the most powerful amplifier anybody has ever had. But they only appear at twilight, and they're ancient magical creatures. Not magical, sorry, they just have the same non-magic abilities that the Grisha have. Nobody has magic. She's like, oh, the one in the stories where if you spared its life, it would grant you a wish. The Darkling just laughs at this and goes, yeah, that's not true. And then informs her that his trackers are close to finding them. He continues on to explain that if they kill the stag and then take the antlers from it, that they'll be able to make it into a necklace for the amplifier for her, and that it's their only hope in destroying the fold. Now, Bagra thinks all this is crazy and that they're chasing a childhood story myth. Alina asks, why couldn't I just use a amplifier in the meantime to practice? He just goes, you need to read your theory book some more, Alina. And then right before he leaves says, I've been waiting for you a very long time. Later, she looks up the theory on amplifiers and discovers that a Grisha can only have one amplifier and an amplifier can only have one Grisha. And there's no take-backsies. You can't have more than one, and the amplifier can't be used for more than one person. Later on, Genia slips Alina a note saying on where she could find Mal and where he is, and it's where she's been sending the letters to. So she's pretty upset about this. She figures that their friendship is just completely over and he doesn't care about her at all anymore. And she's been writing to him for no reason and he's probably just been laughing at all her letters coming in. Now, she goes into training with Baghra that day very, very angry. And Baghra just keeps egging her on. She then goes into this flashback memory of when the Grisha came and she remembers feeling the power in her, but knowing that her and Mal were different, and if she let that power out, she would be separated from him, and he was like the only steady thing she had in her life. So she pushed it down day after day after day, and no one ever found out. And she eventually forgot about it and blocked it out of her own memory. She's sitting there thinking, but now it's time to let go. I'm so sorry I hid you for so long. And then light starts to fill the room. After that, she starts being more active with the other Grisha. She's joining them on excursions. They would go out to the lake at the end of every day and use their power. She goes out and does that. She wasn't doing that before because none of them knew she didn't have the ability to use her power on her own. So she was trying to hide that. She's also just looking more alive. These dark circles that she's had under her eyes all her life are going away. When Grisha use their power, it basically recharges them more than anything. Unless they overexert it, then it will drain them. I love this quote from the book. It's from Elaine. She says, "It was as if that moment in Baghra's cottage was my first full breath, and I had awakened into my new life." I like it, it's pretty. Now, David in this time has made her gloves where she's able to shift where the mirror discs are, so she's able to blind her opponent. She has permission from Botkin to use her powers in training sometimes, because you're not supposed to otherwise, but her powers are just blinding people, so it's not that bad. She has a really good practice section with Botkin one day, and he gives her a Gersha steel knife, which is a very high honor to get and to receive, and he even says it's a high honor to give her. Now, at the end of the winter season, the king and queen are going to be hosting a big festival ball celebration for the end of the winter season, and all the nobles are invited, everybody's gonna be there, and all the summoners are also going to put on a little demonstration show for the guests of their abilities. In this area, we do learn that the king has 2 sons. Neither of them are ready for the throne. One day in training, Baghra is pushing Alina to her limits when the Darkling walks in and says, "It's not enough." "All right, you Mr. Debbie Downer." Baghra then says, "Well then stop waiting for the stag that may not even exist and get her an actual amplifier." He goes, "No, it has to be the stag. That is the only thing that will make her powerful enough to do this." And then he has to walk her back to the little palace. This was a night session she was having with Baghra. She's been doing these just to get some extra practice in. He explains that he's heard nothing about the deer, how his men has crossed into enemy territory today. They may just lose it. They're a little concerned about it right now. They continue talking about the stag, and he asks, "Do you think I'm crazy?" And she goes, "Why would you care what I think?" And he says, "I don't know, but I do," and then kisses her. Reminder, he is 120 years old, and she is 17. Luckily, Ivan, who I haven't really cared about to this moment, comes out and they hear him, so they break up pretty quickly from this kiss of way too big of an age gap. Ivan definitely saw it, so he's smirking a little. And then the Darkling's like, "Gotta go." He's looking shocked at what happened and just confused about what he just did, but then runs off. Now, it's the day of the ball. Gina, of course, is helping Alina get ready. She should be helping the queen, but the queen is pretending to have a headache, so all her ladies-in-waiting will dote over her and just hype her up, and she just wants attention. So Gina's over here getting Alina ready during this time. Now, the Darkling has been gone for quite a while before this ball, and Gina lets Alina know that he got back yesterday, but the Darkling didn't even try to talk to Alina, so Alina's like, was it just a random kiss? What's going on? She doesn't know. And then her kefta for the ball arrives, and it's black. Gina is so excited about this. She runs into Zoya's room with Alina, tells Zoya, "Get out, Darkling's orders," because Zoya has a full-length mirror that Alina doesn't have. Alina looks in the mirror and just gets a confidence boost from it for the first time in forever from looking in the mirror. And Gina's so happy for her. I'm so happy for her. Alina's feeling good about herself tonight. It's a great time. Now, as she's looking in the mirror, she looks over and Gina's expression has gone to a little bit of concern. And she says, "The Darkling really doesn't pay that much attention to anyone. Just be careful with powerful men." Alina takes this time to ask Gina if anything has happened with the king. She confirms, but then jokes, "At least I got a few jewels about it, so it's fine." Alina just goes, "No, it's not. Why didn't the Darkling do anything about that to protect you?" And Genia goes, he's done so much more than you will ever know to protect me. He's as much of a slave to the king as the rest of us are. For now. I'm sorry, what do you mean for now? Are we planning a coup? Alina doesn't ask any questions, but I would be asking so many questions if somebody just said, for now. What? I'm sorry. They just go running off to the ball now. Alina's not the biggest fan of balls. She does have a armed guard kind of watching out for her the whole night. She's saying hi to people. She's drinking some champagne. It's time for the demonstration. As she's watching the other people demonstrate, the Darkling comes up beside her. Ivan then comes up to the Darkling, whispers something in his ears. The Darkling is clearly very excited about this, but doesn't elaborate on what it was to Alina. They then do their little shadow and light routine secret handshake that they do in front of everybody all the time. People in the crowd are shouting, oh my goodness, it's a miracle, a saint, blah, blah, blah. He then uses his shadow powers to sneak them out of the crowd undetected. And then he takes her to a dark room and they start kissing. She stops kissing him only because she can feel that he's angry. He explains, I'm only angry because I'm here kissing you instead of in the war room trying to figure out how to get the stag that the trackers found. And then she doesn't even care that they found the stag and they just go back to kissing. Finally, a sound in the hallway breaks them up and he's like, I gotta go. He looks out the door, closes it, asks her, can I come see you tonight? She doesn't answer before he hears another sound and runs off. And she's just standing there like, I don't know what I was supposed to say in that moment. As she's heading back to the ball, the apparat just appears in the hallway behind her saying, we're running out of time, and she just rushes into the ball. She does not want to talk to this creepy man. She ends up losing him in the crowd. She's talking to people. She's swarmed by people. Eventually, she runs into Fedor again. Fedor. She runs into Fedor again. He just says, it seems like the Darkling was right after all. She goes, huh? He reminds her, you said you didn't believe you were Gersha at first. Clearly you are. And then the crowd of admirers just swarm in and make him disappear. Eventually she goes back to the little palace. She's standing in the hallway debating on what to do. She still doesn't know what she should have said to the Darkling. She's really overthinking it. When this group of people walks by, and one of them is Mal. Now she just goes running straight for him, gives him the biggest hug. So happy and relieved to see him. She asks, what are you doing here? And he standoffishly says, I had to report to your master. Mal, what the hell, man? She figures out he's the one hunting the stag. Of course he is. He's the best tracker anybody's ever known in all of mankind. She also figures out that he didn't get any of her letters, which makes that a little better. He also saw the demonstration in the ballroom and noticed how the Darkling looked at her and how she looked at the Darkling. He's clearly a little jealous. She then notices a new scar on his face and starts to say, Genia could fix that for you. And then he just interrupts her from that, continuing on his jealous-filled rant. He spits out, the Darkling owns you. She spits out, he owns all of us then. Then she just runs back to her room, and once she gets there, she just starts sobbing. I know it has to be the loudest, gut-wrenching sob that she's letting out right now. Then there's a knock on her door. She's wondering maybe it's the Darkling. She goes to open it, it's Bagra. Bagra grabs her arm and says, come with me. Doesn't give any other explanation. They start going down the hall in a way she's not familiar with. They go down a secret passageway and go into this room with a little bed and a bag in there. Bagra then says, you have to leave this place tonight or you will spend the rest of your life as a slave to him. Alina's like, hey, did you forget like your meds or something? You doing okay? She's going on, the Darkling's going to use his powers to expand the fold. You have to get out of here now. Alina goes, I'm gonna find you a healer. Okay, we gonna get you some help. And then Bagra shows her the shadows coming off of her hands, saying, you don't know him at all. Bagra is the Darkling's mother. Oh! She explains that he is the Black Heretic, the one who set the fold upon the earth. And he has just been pretending to die and come back and die and come back many, many times. Alina's trying her best to argue with this, but it's slowly starting to sink in. She continues on saying the Volcra wasn't something he accounted for. He expected to be able to travel in the fold no problem and take over the world that way, basically. But the Volcra stop him from doing that. She explains the Volcra are actually what the people who lived in the fold areas turned into, and that not even the Darkling is safe in the fold if they exist. She's still trying to argue, but not as much right now. She goes, think about what will happen to the Second Army if we have access to all the new technology, warfare weapons that there are. The Second Army will cease to exist and the Darkling will lose all his power if the fold disappears. But if he can control the fold, he'll be able to destroy full cities and easily make anybody bow to him. Alina's like, but I wouldn't help him do that. I wouldn't. Baghra explains, you wouldn't have a choice. Whoever kills the stag has the power to control the amplifier. So he would have full control of her abilities if she had this amplifier on her and he was the one to kill the stag. She's on the ground shaking now, knowing that she's been lied to, everything's clicking into place, her world is crashing down. She finally gets to her feet and says, what do I do? Baghra tells her, you have to slip out tonight. Go with the entertainers. They are starting to leave already. You slip into the back of one of their coaches. No one is going to check them going out. They were checked getting brought in though, but they're not checking them again. And then you get out of here and you head west and you go into the fold and you disappear. She asks, why are you helping me do this to your son? Baghra says, because I love him too much to let him do something that he can't be redeemed from. Ugh. Alina thanks her, changes, runs out, and jumps onto the first cart heading out. She gets out of the palace. She is traveling away from everybody now. Oh, we are in a whole new stage of this story. Once the carriage comes to a stop, she figures out she's in a town that's west of where she was. She got lucky. She gets out, gets some supplies that she needs, and then heads out on the road. Baghra had included some money in the bag that she gave her. It would have been plenty for a horse, but she knew a single woman buying a horse would have raised a lot of red flags, so she decides not to do that. Now, a few days later, she's going through another city at night. She's walking past this inn when a man comes out. He grabs her and starts taking her to a dark alley. She uses his power to get him off, and then a soldier walks out in the Darkling's colors, looks at her, recognizes her, and she starts running. They're chasing her through the woods. She is running, she's going down a hill, she rushes too much and then ends up tumbling down into a freezing cold river. Remember, winter just ended. It's still really cold here. And then just gets swept down the river. Finally it stops, she crawls out onto a bank. She is freezing cold right now and ends up hiding under some underbrush because there's no way she's going to be able to outrun them at this point, so she just hopes she can hide. She hears noises, she knows it's the soldiers, but she hears him say, nothing here. So she starts getting ready, she thinks they've gone now, and then she hears a step from her left. She looks over and it's Mal. He just puts a finger to his lip and starts leading her away. They don't talk until he gets them to a place that he feels like is safe enough for them to rest for the night. The first thing Alina asks him is, do you find the herd with the stag? He tells her, no, but they're close. But I don't think they can find it without me because I'm just that good. And you have to have a feel for these things. He's real humble, guys. Mal then goes, now you answer my question. Why did you run? She just says, to save the world. Mal just responds, oh, so it's not just a lover's quarrel. She can't say no fast enough to this. He tells her, get some rest. She's clearly exhausted. She's falling asleep when she says, thanks for finding me. Mal just says, always. Ah! It's so simple, but so cute. Okay, I like them much better. Age appropriate, very, very nice. Good job, book. She then explains everything that Baghra told her and where Baghra told her to go. Mal responds with, yeah, that's a bad idea. You can't just run from him for the rest of your life. We should go north and try to find the stag before he does. It's really the only shot we have. She's like, but he'll be close to there. If he catches us, he's gonna kill you and take me forever. What were you thinking coming after me? He says, I didn't think. I was ordered to hunt you. The hardest part was leading the rest of them away from you. She just says in defeat, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. He just responds, I'm not afraid to die, but I'd like to give us a fighting chance. Eventually they decide that they do need to go back into the city to restock their goods. He goes into a home that's unlocked, steals some of their clothes so they'll blend in better. Once they get to the city, they realize it's Butter Week and there's going to be this giant parade going through the town where a nobleman will hand out bread to peasants. So they're going through, he's buying stuff. Alina sneaks off, goes into the parade, goes to the nobleman's cart, gets a sweet roll from him. She gets back to Mal and he's like, that was stupid. Alina goes, well, I was gonna share it with you, but now I don't think I will. They're hidden back in this alley when a few men come up to them with knives. Luckily, they're just robbers, but they don't have any cash, so they start searching his bag, notice it's an army bag, notices the army rifle, knows that there is a deserter that they will get a good cash prize for if they bring him in. Then they start fighting. These two, when they run away, they are sprinting for a long while. Finally, Mal thinks they're far enough away, so they take a rest. She thinks Mal is sitting there crying. He's actually just laughing about how absurd all this is right now. He then says, that better be one hell of a cinnamon roll. They go back and forth. They are in laughing fit, crying, laughing, just sides hurt. That laugh that you do with your best friend where you just can't stop laughing even if it's a serious situation. We get Alina's and her thoughts in the book on all of this, and it goes, we'd been robbed. We'd almost been killed. We were being hunted by the most powerful man in all of Ravka, but we were friends again, and sleep came more easily than it had in a long time. They continue traveling with some more cute moments, and finally get near to where the deer probably is. Then one night, Alina asks, I need you to promise me something. He goes, what is it? She says, if they catch us, I need you to kill me. He goes, please don't make me do that. They go back and forth like this for a while. Eventually he agrees to do that and kind of starts pacing around, and she ends up going back to sleep, luckily. A few days later, they thought they would find the stag at the end of that day's trip. They didn't. It gets to twilight. There's no stag. They're talking that night, and Mal just blurts out that Mikhail and Debro, they're dead. Yeah, they died when they had to go over into enemy territory. He explains that 9 went in and 2 came out. He was one of them. He then gets on to the topic of how she saved his life in the fold and how he didn't do anything to save her when she was getting taken away. And she just says, there's nothing that you could have done. It's okay. I just kept seeing you disappear every time I closed my eyes. Next day, they've been walking for a while. They finally stop in a clearing. They both apologize for what they said to each other in the little palace when they had that argument when they first saw each other again. Mal says, when I first came after you, I thought it was because you saved my life. But now I know it's not that. I don't know what it is, but now it's just different. And he says, you looked happy like you belonged with him that night on the stage. Alina says, I was happy, but I've never really belonged anywhere. He says, you belonged with me. And she just goes, I haven't for a long time. He then asks her, did you miss me every day? Because I missed you every hour. I wanted to go talk to you. I wanted to go find you and tell you about my day, but every time I thought about it, my heart broke all over again about what has happened. I'm sorry I took so long to see you, Alina, but now I do. And then they kiss, and it's just so sweet. They're so cute. I mean, it's magical. It really is. Okay, they stop kissing. They're staring into each other's eyes when Alina sees a reflection in Mal's eyes and goes, Mal, the stag. He whips out his bow, is ready to shoot it, to take it down so she can easily kill it. She says, wait. She goes up to the stag, has her hand on its snout? Muzzle? No, she has her hand on its mouth nose area, and she turns to Mal going, we have to find another way. I can't kill it. And then it gets shot with an arrow. Don't worry, it wasn't Mal that did it, it was the Darkling. Actually, maybe that's probably more worrisome that he's here. But he's here. Mal tries to shoot the stag so at least he'll have power over the amplifier and not the Darkling. One of the squallers sweeps his arrows away so he can't do that. Then a little ways back, the Darkling says, you should have listened to me, Alina. The Darkling starts using his powers. She's trying to protect them and the stag. She knows she's not going to be able to hold it much longer, and she says, do it, Mal. And he just says tearfully, I can't do it. And then the darkness closes in on them. And they grab Mal and kill the stag. Then David is here too. And he's here to make the stag collar. It's not gonna have a way to take it off, so it's not a necklace, it's a collar. She's begging David not to do this. David looks remorseful but still does it. They just hurt Mal if they need her to do anything for them. They get the collar on her, it's welded on. The Darkling puts a hand on her shoulder and thinks light, and she lights up. He has full control over her now. Full control over her power. They chain Mal up, they say we're going back to camp, and then they just burn the stag. The disrespect. They travel with these two as prisoners heading towards the fold, and she's traveling in the coach most of the time. He warns her at some point, when we greet the others, you are to act like nothing happened. I did not tell them you ran away. Wasn't gonna do that. We found you. You're gonna act like everything's fine, and we're just gonna pretend you were off for a few days preparing for your adventure. The Darkling is clearly a little jealous of Mal getting her attention and says, he will never understand you. He's nothing like you. They get there, her friends rush up to her. Marie whispers in her ear, are you all right? She doesn't say anything, she doesn't want Mal to get hurt. And she also sees Zoya looking at her collar, like she wants to be wearing it herself. Alina's like, I would give it to you if I could. She doesn't say that out loud, but that's what she's thinking. 4 nights later, Genia comes in saying, I shouldn't be here. They're arguing for a bit. It's revealed Genia's on the Darkling side a little more than she's on Alina's side. It's also revealed that they made the king sick and the apparat is serving in the king's place for the time being. Before Genia leaves, she says, David regrets what he did. Alina just says, tell him I forgive him. Ivan eventually comes in to take her to the Darkling. These two have a very awkward convo for a little bit, and then she basically just starts begging to save Mal, saying, tell me whatever I need to say to save him, and I will. He then says, if I let him go, you still think you'll be able to reconnect with him. That's giving you far too much power. They argue about her trusting him and what's best for Ravka. He ends this saying, someone has to lead, somebody has to end this war. Believe me, I wish there was another way. You know what, I don't believe you on this actually. She's just shaking her head. He says, fine, make me your villain. He then tells her to come here, so she goes over to him. He has a hand on her face and says, I want you to beg for his life. She does. He ends up kissing her. I don't like creepy men. I don't think anybody likes creepy men. This is a very bad dude. I feel really stupid for liking him in the beginning of this book, okay? Really, really stupid. He then tells Ivan to take her to his cell to say goodbye to Mal. She turns on him screaming, liar, what do you mean? You said what? These two are now alone in the cell. They kiss, they hug for the cell. They're talking about all the memories. She brings up the little scar that she has on her is from when they were 15. Mal was coming back from some journey and she was repairing this teacup. When she saw him, she just got so excited, let it slide down. It sliced in her wrist, but she just went out to hug him. And that's the day she knew things changed between them. He's comforting her for the night. She falls asleep at some point. And the next morning, she's on the skiff before she knows it. Now, she's realized that the Darkling has brought ambassador from the enemies and some merchants on as well to see what he can do to the fold. Once they're in the dark of the fold and the Volcra are approaching, he holds her arm, says light, and she lights up, protecting them from the Volcra. And then he lifts his arms up, claps them together, and then the fold starts expanding, destroying an entire village. The Gersha on the ship are kind of like, oh, that's bad. The people that the Darkling brought on the ship that didn't know this was about to happen are just standing there like, what are you doing, you monster? And he asks, do you need to see more? He says, there's no more Rafkins, Furgens, Kirch, and no Shahan. No more war, just peace. They're like, peace on your terms? He's like, yeah, peace on my terms. You want to fight this? Do you want me to destroy your city? I'll do it. You see what I can do now? I'll frickin' do it. Then he tells Ivan to get the prisoner and they throw Mal overboard. Alina runs up, punches Ivan in the face, finally. The Darkling just says, hold. And then through the mind meld amplifier thing says, bring in the light. Slowly bringing in the light past Mal, only to the ship. She hears him scream, but then the nightmares that she thought she was having about the Stag, she realizes the Stag had been showing her strength from the price of mercy and the power that it bestowed. She understands. She feels this invisible grip that the Darkling has had on her powers for days now disappear, and she has full control again. Because she granted mercy to the Stag, she also has the ability to control the amplifier, and she overrides what the Darkling ability was for it. She gets the light back over Mal. He's bleeding, but he's alive. The Darkling's standing there like, what the hell? He shouts, seize her! She plunges them all into the dark, jumps over ship onto the sand, goes to Mal, gets light on the ship and them again. She then raises her arms up, brings them down in a slice, and slices their mass in half. She can do the cut, the powerful cut that most Gersha can't do. She can do it. She's yelling at them to not help him, to help her. And none of them listen. The Darkling now shouts at her, you won't just leave us all here to die. You're not gonna do that. She then uses the cut again, cuts the entire ship in half now, grabs Mal's arm, and starts running. Now, they reach the other side of the fold and see the true sea for the first time in their entire lives. They have a sweet moment, they kiss. He grabs one of the golden pins that Genia had put in her hair before this excursion and goes off to buy them new clothes so they won't stick out in this new land, and also in her Gersha costume that she's been wearing. He comes back with new clothes and a scarf to hide her necklace. He says, one day we'll find a way to remove that forever. She goes, no, I don't want that. She knows that she has control over it now. She knows it gives her power to go against the Darkling, honestly. There's no way that she can remove it and ever really feel safe. And she tells him it's Ravka's only chance. They burn their old clothes. He kisses her on her neck just above where the stag necklace is, and she finally lets herself cry as he just holds her close. Epilogue? They're on a boat. I had to take a break. It's the next evening now, though. Let's get started with Siege of Storm recap. All right, let's get started with our second book recap, Siege of Storm. Siege and Storm. So it's not called a deep dive, cuz. These two have made it safely across the ocean. They're getting used to their new town. Alina's not too happy because she can't use her powers, so she's a little sad and has gone back to her old self. But they're saving up the money. They're gonna move to the country so she's able to use her powers again here soon. They get back to the inn they've been staying at during their time in this town while they save up the money. Alina's feeling a little suspicious as she walks in. Something just feels off, but she doesn't trust her gut. So Mal goes to open their door, and then boom, it burst open. They grab him, they grab her, the Darkling's there. They did not escape him for very long. Now, Alina can tell that the Gersha that are with the Darkling are a little scared of him now. They used to just show this respect, and now they seem to be afraid of him. He says, I wanted to thank you. Alina makes eye contact with Mal and shouts, now. Mal elbows Evan, who is holding on to him, gets out of his grasp. She starts using her light powers to get the rest of them away. But then the Darkling starts making these shadow creatures from his powers, like real life shadow creatures that can harm people. So one of them goes over to bite Alina. She's down for the count. She is out, doesn't know what's happening. Now, when she wakes up, she's aware she's on a boat again, and Genia is at the end of her bed. Genia, I've said that so many different ways that I have to apologize. Genia's at the end of her bed, ready to help her out with whatever she may need, and then Ivan eventually comes in to take her up to the top deck. She's asking, where's Mal? No one's telling her. Ivan just takes her up top to go see the Darkling. Now, when she was going in and out of consciousness the past week or so, she thought she dreamed of these two figures in her room with golden eyes and also this other man that was talking to them vaguely about some stuff she didn't really understand. But when she gets to the top deck, she notices these two. This is Tolia and Tamara. They're twins that work on the boat. She sees them, just takes account that they are there, they exist. The first thing Alina asks the Darkling is, where's Mal? Mal is standing at the far end of the ship from her. But he's not hurt, he's perfectly fine. The Darkling then asks her if her wound from the shadow creature still hurts. She lies and says no, and then he informs her that it won't actually ever heal, not even with the help of Gersha power, which is unheard of, basically. I don't know what sort of demon he's made, but it's bad. He calls these shadow creatures Nichivoya and says it's only the beginning. Ivan starts pulling her back across the deck to take her back to her room. She trips and falls. Tamara goes over to check on her and help her back up. She then reminds Ivan that Alina is Sturmhond's prisoner and should be treated accordingly. What we know about Sturmhond is that he's a Ravkan privateer and smuggler, and he also helped out with the war efforts in some ways. Ivan and Tamara, and Tolia of course came to insert himself in this argument as well. They're all arguing for a while, and then eventually Ivan uses his powers on them to hurt both of them slightly, not right away, but showing that he can if he wanted to. Sturmhond then comes over and says, I'm a gracious host, but I do have rules. Ivan stops pretty fast. Once they're released, Sturmhond tells the twins that they did well and starts walking Alina back to her room. They're talking and walking. She's about to ask him for help, and he's like, no, I actually only work for coin. Why would you ask me that? That was a really stupid thing to try to ask me there. Never ask that again. Please and thank you. Okay, let's keep walking. Crazy lady. Now, Genia comes to bring Alina dinner later that night. They finally get into an argument about everything that's happened. Alina tries to tell her what the Darkling has actually done and expanding the fold and everything like that, but Genia just doesn't really believe her and still seems to be slightly more on the Darkling side. She still cares about Alina, and you can see that, but she cares more about the Darkling and the future he's promised to her. Now, Genia is leaving Alina, telling her to get some rest. They'll be at the ice soon. Alina is wondering what the heck that means, but okay. But before Genia can leave, Alina stops her and asks, did you ever actually send my letters to Mal? Genia confirms that she never did because the Darkling told her not to. Over the next little bit, a lot happens. She knows that the Darkling must be looking for another amplifier that he can use on her. So scratch what we knew about amplifiers before and only having one amplifier for Gersha. That doesn't apply to this amplifier. It's special, okay? Got it. And the reason it's special is because it's from a creature called the Sea Whip. It's supposed to be this mythical story thing like the Stag was as well. It's kind of like a water dragon, basically. The Darkling tells Mal to track this thing or he will start hurting Alina. And every day that Mal doesn't find it, Alina will have her skin cut off and then healed back on and repeat, repeat, repeat. Sharmhan convinces them to give Mal at least a week to try to find this creature before they start hurting the girl on his ship. The Darkling is then talking to her in his quarters later on, and he's basically using all the talking points that an abusive, narcissistic man would use. It's not fun to read about. We also discover in this point that Volcra don't like the taste of him, so he got beat up pretty bad, but they didn't kill him. Sadly. Then the Darkling hands her the book that the Apparat had given Alina months ago. The book called The Lives of Saints. It's basically a picture children book for the Gersha to read. Or for anybody to read, really. He asks her, did you ever read it? She says no. He then starts talking about how Mal will never understand her and how he's gonna grow old, blah, blah, blah. He's definitely a little jealous of Mal. And remember, Gersha don't age because of their Gersha powers. It keeps them young. Maybe it's Maybelline. At the end of the week, luckily, Mal has found something, but they also notice a ship that's close by. It doesn't have any flags flying that are alarming to them. So they keep on their merry way, hunting down the Sea Whip sea dragon thing. They do find the Sea Whip. They land a few harpoons in it from a boat they had sent out with people on it. But then the other ship starts pulling up besides them. And it's now flying a flag with a red dog on it and the double eagle crest of Ravkan. The people from this boat start swinging onto the boat that has all of our characters on it. Sturmhond starts shouting commands to these people and the people that are with him on his boat originally to attack the Darkling's people. And we also figure out that Sturmhond has Gersha on his ship as well, so they're fighting back with equal forces, trying to get these two off of there. Talia goes over, picks up Alina, swings her over his shoulder, and is just carrying her. Tamara runs over with a knife in hand running straight towards Mal. Alina's a little panicked, but she's just cutting off Mal's bindings that he still had on his hands. The four of them are running now. Tamara's killing people because why wouldn't she be? And then Ivan pops up, starts using his powers against Talia again. And Tamara, with her sword in one hand, starts clenching her fist, and Ivan starts struggling as well. She's a heartrender, just as much as Ivan is. As she has him stalled out with that, she goes over and just stabs him through with her sword. Ivan's dead. Then Genia runs up. She has a gun in her hand, but she can't make herself hurt Alina. Alina tries to convince her to run with them, but she can't. She stays on the ship. Then Sturmhond meets our group and they all jump over onto the other ship. The Darkling starts sending his shadow creatures after them. Luckily, none of them make it. They have squallers on the ship, which are the ones that control the wind. So they're making good pace away from them. They also have the Sea Whip so that Alina can kill it and the Darkling won't have any power over her or a threat to have power over her. And they're scurrying off now. Alina goes down to kill the dragon. Unfortunately, it's not going to live with the wounds that it sustained, so she knows it's basically a mercy kill for it, but she's still conflicted about it. Eventually, she pushes one of the harpoons further in, and the dragon dies. Mal, after this, asks Sturmhond, what are we doing here? What's going on? And he's like, well, you see, the Darkling got outbid. Also, have you looked in this cool picture book? I think you should look at this picture in your picture book. She then sees the page that has Saint Ilia and the dragon behind it, as well as the stag. So it looks like the amplifiers are meant to work as a pair. Sturmhond then continues on, like, also I'm taking you to Ravka, and if you don't like the person you want to meet, then I'll take you wherever you want, but please give them a chance. Alina and Mal just look at each other like, whatever option do we have right now? Sturmhond leaves them, leaving these two to talk about the possibility of her turning these dragon scales into another amplifier for herself. They're kind of unsure about it, but she's leaning towards wanting that amplifier. She wants the power that it will give her and the reassurance that she would be able to defeat the Darkling with it. Then a little later, they're looking at that picture again with the stag and the dragon, and then they notice that there's a bird far in the background, which wouldn't seem like a big deal, but they notice that this is a firebird, which is something that's weaved into like every Ravkan legend. It's the heart of Ravka, as they describe it. She starts telling him, I don't want to, but we need to find that. I need to be able to defeat the Darkling, and I feel like that's my only way. Mal eventually agrees after a little of arguing about it that he will hunt it down for her and track it. Later that night, they wake up the fabricator that's on board to make the bracelet out of the dragon scales for her. She has another amplifier on. Once they put it on, she starts using her power more than she ever has before. She is lighting up the entire ocean, basically, sending out a homing signal to come find them. Mal eventually gets her back under control because she was kind of losing herself just a little. But Mal hugs her, she gains her control back and brings back in the light. And she's sitting there thinking something's missing. It's the bracelet of the feathers on my other wrist. That's what's missing. Luckily, overall, they have a very uneventful trip. They're bonding with some of the crew members, like Tolia and Tamara a little more, Sturmhond a little more. Alina says that he kind of looks like somebody she knows, but she can't quite place him, so she thinks she's just going crazy. Just keep that in mind. These two have a bit of tension over the trip. It does ease once they get to the end of the journey, at least. Now, they are off the big ship into a smaller ship to get to Ravka's shore. While they're sitting in the ship, Sturmhond hands both of them goggles and then gets the squallers and this different looking mask up. And then they start flying. He's invented a squaller powered airplane, I guess? Airship? They're flying now. These two are having a great time until Sturmhond all of a sudden is like, time to go through the fold. Alina's like, sorry, what? No, let's not do that. They don't listen to her and they go into the fold. Luckily, she does have the light powers and she starts using those. They say, bring them in a little because they have fancy guns that can shoot a lot of bullets in a minute. So they went to hunt the Volcra that's been hunting them for so long. So she brings her light in, makes it dark. They hear them getting closer and then she gets her light back just over the ship so the Volcra can't attack them. And they start killing so many of them. Now, when they entered the fold, it felt different. It felt wrong to her. And as the Volcra are dying this time, she feels like she's hearing them scream as humans and not as the creatures she once heard. She doesn't like the sound of them dying. She knows they're bad, but it feels wrong to kill them to her. They then go hunting. They find a nest of them. They throw in some grenades and blow up the nest. And then, while this is happening, Alina's mind starts playing some mind games with her and she sees the Darkling on the bow of the ship airplane thing coming towards her. He says, don't worry, it gets easier with time. And then he slashes a knife at her and she just ducks, huddles, the light goes out, the Volcra are getting close. One of them slashes one of the mast and also hurts one of the squallers as well. She finally gets back under control. She gets the light back over them and they start rushing out of the fold, end up crash landing on the ground and then jumping into the lake afterwards on this boat. So they're like skidding through the lake, crash landing style over here. Everybody makes it out. Like I said, the one squaller is injured, but he's gonna be okay. All of them made it to land. They just almost died. Then a crew member turns on her asking, what the hell happened back there? He almost died. Alina just responds with, ask your captain. And then Sturmhond chimes in, she's right, saying I should have given her more warning, and then he takes his goggles off and he doesn't look like Sturmhond anymore. Alina figures out that Tolia is a tailor. He doesn't like being called that, but that is one of his abilities. Mal asks him, who are you? He doesn't have an actual answer for them before soldiers pop up and start surrounding them, asking that same question, basically. One of the soldiers or a colonel asks for his name. Sturmhond then takes off his coat, revealing that he's in a military uniform with a pin representing that he was an officer, and then says, I am Nikolai Lantsov, Major of the 22nd Regiment, Soldier of the King's Army, Grand Duke of Udova, and second son of His Most Royal Majesty, King Alexander III, ruler of the Double Eagle Throne. May his life and reign be long. Colonel Ravsky then jumps from his horse saying, you are not him, I worked with Nikolai. And then he gets closer and he bows down to a knee, saying, I am so sorry. Alina's just standing there processing all of this when Nikolai says, oh, I also brought the Sun Summoner with me. Hope that helps. If you want to know this man's attitude, the whole reason that Finnick's photo is up here is because they have the same exact attitude. I love it so much. And then Alina punches him. What an icon. They get led to a nice tent. Mal tells Alina, well, that was dumb to punch him. Nikolai just goes, please stay here and let me explain. Be right back. He comes back after talking with some people apparently, and he's like, yes, I am the prince. Don't call me Sturmhond here. They don't really know that that's also me. The king and queen think I'm at college over here. He goes, I need your help. The fold is expanding. The first army is about to revolt, and the second army has basically disappeared, non-existent anymore because the Darkling either took them or scared the rest of them off, or made everybody else turn on the Gersha because he seems evil now, and finishes this with saying, I think I can convince my brother to step aside and for me to be king. Because remember, their dad's not doing too well. Alina's like, why do you need me for this? Nikolai explains, the apparat has basically turned you into a living saint. I want you to help me bring this country some hope. I want you to help me reunite the first and second armies by becoming my queen. Mal does not like this proposal or situation, shockingly. Nikolai's like, whoa, it would just be a marriage of convenience, nothing else. We may have to worry about heirs at some point, but like, besides that, we're fine. Mal also does not like this part of the conversation. Mal says, you don't have a right to her. And he shoots back, you really thought you could just take the Sun Summoner, the most powerful Grisha we have seen in years, and run off and hide in the country for the rest of your lives? Yeah, no shot. These two are arguing some more. Finally, Alina breaks them up, saying, stop, I'm not going to marry you, but I will return to Os Ulta with you and consider helping you, but I want the second army. I want to be their leader. Nikolai's like, well, okay, so people love you and all, but like, you're a little young to be leading a whole army. She steps back with, Grisha don't care about age or experience, they care about power. And I am probably the only one powerful enough to bring down the Darkling. So yes, I would like to lead them. They make a deal on this. Mal's over here like, where will I go? She's like, you could be the head of my own personal guard. He's unsure on this matter, but shuts up for now. They've been traveling for a few days. He is making every stop to align himself correct politically, talking to everybody, really making a run to be the next king over his brother who is the firstborn. And not to mention, he also might be a bastard child. So he's doing everything he can. He's also definitely the most qualified out of the two for the job, but you know. These two are talking during dinner one night when he says, you and Mal need to be discreet. You can do whatever you want in your private time, but power is alliance. AKA saying Mal is not a very powerful man in this situation. Also, you should get your own color. She's currently wearing a blue kefta like all the other summoners do. Again. He's like, maybe black? Mal just spits out, no black. Elaine explains, it's the color of the man who tried to kill him and the one who wanted to kidnap me forever, so yeah, no black, please. Nikolai's like, fine, whatever. I mean, it's more reason to take that color as your own now, but do what you want. Then we learn how he got the name Sturmhond on the seas. It was a name I earned. I was on my first enemy ship and I told the captain to lay down his sword. He then said, for Dardan men, make bread from the bones of skinny Ravkan boys. So I told him, foolish captains weren't fit meat for Ravkan men. Then I cut off his fingers and fed them to my dog. I celebrated that night with my men, and once I got to my room, I threw up and cried myself to sleep. Lane's just thinking, oh, he's also scary. Cool. A couple days later, Mal goes up to Alina saying, so I was thinking of who else could be on your guard. And she's going, you're actually gonna be the captain of my guard? He says, of course. He says, a few of Nikolai's men seem all right, especially Tolya and Tamara. She's just happy he's gonna be the captain of her guard. He then goes, well, there was no way I was going to leave you alone with Prince Perfect. I don't even think I could resist him. Another few days later, we learn that Tamara views Grisha power as a divine blessing, and also explains that a lot of people believe that saints were Gershas, and how a lot of people think Alina's a saint. Alina says, I don't want to be a saint. It's not like I'm saving the world or anything. And Tamara's just like, I actually kind of think you are. But okay. Alina then blurts out that Mal is going to ask them to be part of her personal guard, but says, on one condition, no more talk about saints. Now, at some point she's talking with Nikolai about how when the Darkling uses these powers to create these creatures, it doesn't feel him like it feels most Gersha to use their powers at some point. This actually weakens him. So they know that he has a weak point and a stopping point with this power. It isn't unlimited. Nikolai informs Alina during this time that Genia did something to the king that nobody can heal, and also the apparat has just disappeared. One day, once these two are getting back into the coach in front of a bunch of people, he decides to kiss her in front of all of them. Once they're in the coach, she kicks him so hard in the shins. He just responds with, what? The crowd loved it. And you didn't hate it. They make a deal that he will never kiss her again and she will never kick him again. He explains that it was just an act, and the stronger their alliance seemed, the better shot they both have. But he does apologize about crossing the line. He was just improvising. She shoots back, you don't improvise. You change personalities the way people change hats. It's creepy. He looks hurt and asks, do you really find me creepy? She just says occasionally, And during this trip, Nikolai has been doing his best to advise her on how to run an army and the etiquette she should have to do that. It's a lot to cram in a short time period. The night before they get to Os Alta again, they're having dinner at a minor nobleman's house. Alina and Nikolai are at the dinner. She's in her new golden kafta, and Mal is outside patrolling the grounds to make sure everything's safe as her head guard person. She shows off her sun powers after the dinner and starts to head out. She finds Mal outside, they have a cute moment, a cute convo, they kiss, it's a great time. Tamara comes up to them saying, we have company, they want to see the sun summoner. Alina goes up to the gate. Guess who's back? Guess who's freaking back? Fedor's back. He's back. This character had like 2 scenes in the last book, but I just knew he was gonna be a bigger deal. He was just so sweet. But I also feel like he's definitely not making it through this series. I so hope I'm wrong, because I really, really like him right now. You can tell the characters I like because they're just my biggest celebrity crushes. Sorry. Anyways, Fedor's back. It's great. I'm so happy to see him. He starts grinning, saying, I could only hope the rumors were true. Alina's explaining to them that Fedor saved her life from the assassins that tried to attack her that first day she found out she had powers. And Fedor just says, it was my greatest honor. Nikolai has also been here this whole time. He pulls Alina back from everybody and asks, can he be trusted? Alina honestly says, I don't know. The last time I saw him was at a party at the Grand Palace. He was stationed out at the southern border. He was high ranking, but not one of the Darkling's favorites. They go back and forth on whether he's a spy or not, but finally they agree to let him in. He has a giant group of Gersha also with him, but he comes in to talk to Alina. Fedor tells her about how the First Army started pulling Gersha out of their beds once they heard that the fold had expanded and started putting on these sham trials for them, basically just as an excuse to kill any of them, and how he got all the Gersha he could out of there, saying, we could have killed them all, but we just chose to run. He explains that they heard of her returning a few weeks ago and sought out to find her instantly, and how other Gersha are definitely going to be doing this soon. Alina lets him know, be ready to travel to Os Alta tomorrow and clean up. We need to make a good impression. Now, they've almost made it to the gates of Os Alta. Outside of the gate, there is a large group of people waiting for them. This is when the other prince, Prince Vasily, comes up. He seems to be vying for the king position a little more than Nikolai thought, but they let them in. They start leading them to the palace. They make it to the throne room. The king and queen are there. Neither of them really look too great, but they're alive. When Nikolai bows before them, the queen just runs up and embraces him in this motherly, loving hug. Just so excited to see her son again. The royal family then leaves to have a private discussion. There's some shouting for a bit, some other stuff's going on. They're in there for quite a while, but finally they come back out. The king comes back and just starts talking to Alina, saying, you are very young to be leading the Second Army. I'm honestly tempted to put you to death, but my son says that will make you a martyr. He says you can be trusted, I'm not so sure, but Ravka is in desperate needs of your services. Alina says it will be my greatest honor to serve Ravka. He's like, all right, well, at least for now, you'll serve as the Second Army leader. The king then basically says to Mal, I should kill you, but I'm just going to dishonorably discharge you instead, okay? They're walking out of the throne room now. Alina's shocked. She's like, we can get him to change that. And Mal's like, no, I expected this. I left my post. Fedor and all his Grisha are waiting outside on their horses. And Alina thinks Nikolai's done all he can. It's my turn now. And that is where I'm going to leave us for part 1. Please don't kill me. I'll be back soon with part 2, I promise, and we'll finish up this book and the last book. If you want to hear how this trilogy ends, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, like this video, and I will hopefully have that video uploaded very, very soon. But for now, I'm gonna go get some reading done, finish the last half of this book, finish the last book completely, and then I'll be back to finish up this recap. I will see y'all in part 2. Bye, y'all.